After just 8 months in charge, Graham Potter has been sacked by West Ham United. The news broke on Saturday morning following a disastrous start to the Premier League season that left the Hammers 19th in the table. One win in the opening 5 games, 5 defeats in 6 across all competitions, and a toxic atmosphere at the London Stadium. The writing was on the wall. The 3-0 collapse at home to Crystal Palace last weekend was the final straw. As the whistle blew, chants of "sacked in the morning" rang out across the stadium, not only from West Ham fans, but mockingly from the away end as well. Potter's sacking in this latest chapter is a much bigger saga. It's one of fan protests, boardroom failures, questionable recruitment, and a club at risk, if they're not careful, of sleepwalking into the Championship. Potter's downfall wasn't just about results, it was about performances. Across 25 matches, he managed only 6 wins. West Ham finished 14th last season, and this year began with just 3 points from 5 games. That is relegation form. But the numbers behind the results were even more concerning. West Ham ranked bottom of the league for pressing intensity, allowing opponents time and space to play, rarely winning the ball high up on the pitch. And when you look at his time at Brighton, Potter's team thrived on organisation and clever pressing triggers. At West Ham, it was the complete opposite: disjointed, passive and lethargic. Going forward, the team created little. They were third bottom for direct attacks, relying heavily on individuals like Bowen or Paqueta to conjure something from nothing. Too often, fans saw sideways passing, sterile possession, and a lack of urgency. Defensively, set pieces were a nightmare. Goals conceded from corners and free kicks were becoming farcical and very much became a weekly theme. In the end, there was nothing for the fans to get behind with Potter. Goals were being conceded far too easily and no progression in their way of playing to give them hope. The belief in the stands was dwindling minute after minute, with the attention also towards the board. It was inevitable that the West Ham hierarchy would act. West Ham fans aren't just angry about the football, they're angry about the direction of the club. In the build-up to the Palace game, supporters group Hammers United urged fans to protest against the owners. A letter of no confidence was handed to Karen Brady, and the club's response, a statement highlighting investment in training facilities and stadium improvements, only made things worse. Fans called it patronising and lacking substance. For many, the problems go back years. Former striker Tony Cottee was talking about it, saying if you're issuing statements like that, it's basically admitting that the fans are right. Too many avoidable mistakes have been made, poor recruitment, poor managerial appointments, and broken promises. The stats back that frustration. In the 15 years under the current board, West Ham have gone through 9 permanent managers. By contrast, in the 110 years before, they had just 11. That's chaos compared to stability. The move to the London Stadium was supposed to make West Ham move ahead with serious intentions. That UEFA Conference League win was supposed to light the touch paper to progression in the Premier League. Instead, fans feel like they've been sold a dream that never arrived. And now with the team slipping towards the bottom 3, anger at the board is louder than ever. It's not just about tactics. Graham Potter also inherited and in some ways helped shape a squad full of contradictions and imbalances. The £105 million sale of Declan Rice, when you look back, was supposed to reset the project, giving West Ham the funds to rebuild against a younger, hungrier core, but the recruitment strategies felt a bit all over the place, scattergun almost, lurching from one type of player to another without a clear long-term plan. This past summer, West Ham spent £126 million on 8 new signings, with the £38 million arrival of Mateus Fernandes from Southampton standing out. But for every exciting addition, there's been a damaging departure. Mohamed Kudus, arguably their most dynamic attacker, sold to Tottenham, leaving a hole in creativity and match-winning ability. The end result is a squad that feels weaker, not stronger, despite the outlay. The midfield has been the most glaring problem. The pairing of Thomas Souček and James Ward-Prowse lacks mobility and dynamism, making West Ham sluggish against quicker, more athletic sides. Without someone who can break lines with pace or carry the ball through pressure, the Hammers often lose control of games in the middle third. Declan Rice used to be the man to mask those flaws. Now they're brutally exposed. Defensively, the constant chopping and changing of centre-backs has created some instability as well. With no settled partnership, no chemistry, there's a lack of pace across the back line, meaning opponents often find it far too easy to run in behind. At full-back, the signing of Kyle Walker-Peters hasn't solved the structural problems, with defensive positioning still a recurring weakness. Up front, the plan's still kind of equally muddied as well. Callum Wilson signed to be the experienced number 9, but you worry about his struggle with injuries, leaving Jared Bowen carrying far too much of the burden. When Wilson isn't on the pitch, West Ham often play without a proper centre-forward. Fulkrug can play there well, of course, but it leaves the attack fairly toothless and predictable. When you put that together, it paints the picture of a squad that lacks balance, athleticism, and genuine game changers. The website transfermarket.com currently values the West Ham squad as the 14th most valuable in the Premier League, which is essentially bottom half material. And when you're sitting in the relegation zone, that number doesn't feel harsh. Too much money on mediocre players, you could argue, and looking at the current mess, it's hard to disagree. Perhaps the biggest disappointment with Potter's style of play was that at Brighton he was praised for tactical flexibility. They were fluid, there were brave patterns in possession, but at West Ham those ideas never landed. The football's been slow, passive, very one-paced. Opponents know what's coming. They sit deep and allow West Ham sterile possession, then they counter when they give it away. Bowen and Paquetá are two of the league's most exciting attackers, but they've often left isolated and frustrated. Bowen running into channels alone, Paquetá dropping too deep just to get a touch of the ball, or they'll have to produce individual magic to keep West Ham in games. Defensively, the setup was equally uninspiring. They sit back by default, they hope to absorb pressure, but when that defensive wall's breached, there's no plan B. Once the first goal went in, the Hammers folded far too easily under Potter. We've mentioned about the squad and mobility. The squad profile is kind of unbalanced as well across age and athleticism. West Ham went from having one of the oldest squads in the league last season to try to inject youth this summer. But the transition feels kind of half-cooked. Several of the younger signings, like Sunguntu Magasa and El Hadji Malik Diouf, are clearly players for the future, although just started fairly okay, rather than ready-made starters. That has left Potter leaning on older legs, Souček, Ward-Prowse, Wilson carrying the team, but there is that lack of mobility to thrive in the league, increasingly rewards pace and energy in midfield. The lack of runners beyond the ball means Bowen and Paquetá are constantly isolated, forced to create something out of nothing. Compare that with sides like Aston Villa or Brighton, where midfielders are drilled to press, carry, breaking lines at speed. West Ham look like they're stuck in slow motion. It's not just poor recruitment, it's a failure to build a squad that reflects how the Premier League is evolving. For supporters, the contrast with the side under David Moyes was painful. Moyes may have been pragmatic, but his teams were compact, organised and hard to beat. Potter's West Ham were the opposite, fragile, predictable and uninspiring. Now, everything Potter did was inevitably going to be judged against the backdrop of David Moyes. That was always going to be a tough comparison. Moyes wasn't universally adored by West Ham fans. His football often described as pragmatic, sometimes even overly cautious, but what he delivered was hard to argue with. Over his second spell, West Ham averaged a Premier League finish of 9th compared to Potter's 14th in his only full campaign. He obviously delivered consecutive seasons in Europe and that run to the Europa League semi-final in 2022, most memorably the Conference League triumph in 2023. That night in Prague, with Declan Rice lifting the club's first trophy in 43 years, was the high point of a generation. But the decline after Rice's departure has been stark. Moyes' final season still produced 14 league wins compared to Potter's 6 from 25 matches in charge. Moyes' West Ham, while sometimes accused of being too defensive, were resilient. In the 22-23 season, they conceded 53 league goals. Under Potter, West Ham shipped 61 in just 23 games last season. The contrast is telling. What supporters once criticised as negativity under Moyes now looks like organisation and structure. Potter's side, by comparison, has lacked both. The symbolism of timing couldn't be sharper, of course. Potter leaving just as West Ham were playing Everton on Monday night, Moyes' old club and the place where he built his managerial reputation, of course. That game ended 1-1, but it is a reminder of what Moyes gave West Ham: stability, identity, and a platform to compete above their weight. The post-Moyes era was supposed to be about evolution, but instead it felt more like regression. For many, it's kind of a bitter irony. Trying to move away from Moyes' pragmatism, the club ended up losing the very qualities that had kept them competitive. It's more of a step backwards than a step forwards. So what happens next? West Ham have wasted no time. Nuno Espirito Santo is the man. He's been appointed as Potter's replacement. He kicked off his first game in charge with the 1-1 draw away at Everton Monday night as he looked to change the Hammers' fortune. Nuno does arrive with baggage of experience in equal measure. Nottingham Forest, he guided them to 7th last season, their highest finish in 30 years, securing them European qualification. But he was sacked after just 3 games, this time following tensions with the owner over transfer business. At Wolves, he built a solid, organised team, and at Spurs, his reign was really short-lived. It's West Ham pressing their emergency button. They're looking over their shoulder. Many at the club believing that Nuno's the right man. They're looking for him to organise his team, be more brave in possession, and galvanise the club. That organisation is exactly what West Ham have lacked, and they'll be looking more from under Nuno. But fans, of course, are wary. Appointing Nuno is quite a reactive move. Again, another short-term fix, perhaps. Supporters want structure at board level, director of football, a long-term identity. Where is West Ham going? Without that, Nuno risks falling into the same trap as Potter, a manager who's fighting fires or without the tools or the vision to succeed. This is the challenge that now are facing West Ham. Can Nuno steady the ship? Can he get them up the table, or will he just become another name that will be chewed up by the club's broken model? So the Graham Potter West Ham experiment is over. 6 wins, 25 matches, and a fan base that never bought into his style. For him, it's another setback after Chelsea. For West Ham, it's another reset button. Another gamble on a new face. The same old questions about ownership and direction. Nuno Espirito Santo will walk into a club divided, they're disillusioned, and they need stability. He will bring organisation, he will bring experience, but the real test is, can West Ham finally break the cycle of the short-term fixes, or whether Potter's sacking is just the start of the same story all over again. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and like to the channel for more Premier League content. If you love the Premier League and want a podcast or a show you can interact with, check out the Absolute Football podcast. I host the Premier League show on a Tuesday night at 8:30 on their channel. Please do go and check us out. But for now, have a great one, and I'll catch you on the next one.